Alrighty, here we are back in the lab again, and we have decided to do a little home video to update or make an addendum to all of our denture videos. If you'll recall, in the denture videos, specifically the clear duplicate and the duplicate denture videos, I talked about making a new jig because I didn't like the Lang Duplicating Jig. It was just too hard to clean, and the reason it was so hard to clean is we were using putty in our Lang Duplicators. This is Siltec putty. It's the one that I prefer to use. I'm not hawking any company, but I will be honest with you. This putty works a little cleaner. It's a good price, and latex does not make it or does not inhibit its set. Therefore, we use a lot of Siltec putty back in the lab. And we use it instead of alginate in our Lang Duplicating jigs. And so I made all sorts of efforts to make some new jig that you could open up and preserve the putty. Well, my son Charlie came to work for me in the lab and is working towards his CDT, and he was having to clean out the jigs. So let's just have a little scenario. You're the new guy in the lab, and it's your first day, and the job they give you to do is to clean the putty out of the Lang Duplicating jigs. It's the worst job, other than cleaning the plaster trap. You'll get one of these putty knives, or lab knives, and you'll bend them, you'll break them, you cut your hand. But let me show you how we clean the putty out of our Lang Duplicating jigs right here at Cassidy Dental Associates. We put these little knives down because they're dangerous. And we do this. You hold the Lang Duplicating jig just so, and it falls out. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it happens every single time. Just like that. Now, how did we do that? How did we do that? Well, before we get to the actual technique of doing it, what you need to realize is how great it is that we now have permanent records of the patient's dentures. These putty matrices will last indefinitely, and they'll go back into the jigs, so that if you need to make a clear duplicate a year after you've made the patient their denture for their implant placements, or if the patient loses their denture or breaks their denture and they don't have a duplicate, you can press out a duplicate, because all you got to do is hold on to these. And one of the things we do is we index the jigs so we know which jig this goes back into. And so there'll be little Roman numerals in the stone. This is number 3. So it pops right back in to the number 3 Lang Duplicating jig. I have to be honest with you, once we started doing it this way, I just quit the whole idea of making a new jig. In essence, what we did is we did a jig modification procedure. So here's what I'd like to do. Let me show you how we block out this jig with mounting stone so that every one of you can do this in your offices. You can get anybody in your office that pours models and is used to working with stone can do this. It's very simple. Kathy, if you want to go ahead and mix me some mounting stone, what we'll do is while she's getting that stone mixed, this is one that we haven't used a lot. I think we did this as a demonstration. And you can see that the mounting stone's at an angle so that it's tapered out at an angle. It fills up that ledge or that rim lock. But the other thing I want you to notice is the little holes are not clogged up, because you do want a certain amount of retention when you first make your putty matrices of your diagnostic denture, your provisional denture. A lot of times we'll even use a partial. And so when we're blocking this out, we'll get a jig, and if you've used mounting stone in the past, you know it sets pretty fast. You do not have to vacuum mix this. All you need to do is take that blade of that spatula and make a nice, smooth transition from the rim lock all the way around. Now, one of the things that Charlie wanted to make sure that I told you was you don't want to get so much stone that you can't get a big denture in the jig. I'll tell you the other thing this does for you is it cuts down on the amount of putty you use. I believe sincerely that we use a third of the putty that we used to use in these jigs. The great thing about putty too is you can put it in the jig, set it aside, and as opposed to alginate, you don't have to be in a rush to make your duplicate or to make your clear duplicate. With alginate, you've got less than 24 hours to get that done. We can put it into a jig with putty, come back the next day, the next week, the next month, and make it. And so it's a very conservative thing. I'm just taking my finger and I'm just making a smooth transition down to the little perforated areas. For those of you that are used to working with mounting stone, you can get this beautifully smooth just by dipping your finger in a little water. The other thing you can do is take your little spatula and just kind of back it up and scrape it out. Now, there are going to be times when a patient's denture is not going to fit in this. But it wouldn't have fit in the Lang Duplicating Jig anyway. You're going to have to find some other way to duplicate that patient's denture. We may use an old denture flask. We have a microwave denture flask that we can put it in because it's really big. Let me step back here for just a second. I'm going to wet my hand. We're going to post this video on YouTube because I got to be honest with you. Every lab in the country needs to see this. Every dental office in the country needs to see this. And it's just one of those things. It's too good an idea not to pass on to the whole dental community. As you can see, my mounting stone is almost set. Give me just a little wet paper towel. Yeah, thank you. And after this mounting stone has set completely, what we're going to do is we'll then take some sandpaper. The same sandpaper that we sand our models with, 650 fine, wet dry sandpaper, works great. And as you can see, that one's blocked out pretty well. If you bow out from the rim lock, you'll end up with too much stone in there. So you want to make it really very flush. Now after this is set completely, we'll sand it with a little piece of sandpaper, a little wet dry sandpaper, and we'll sand under the running water and then dry it bone dry. Once it's gotten dry, then what we'll do is we'll put a coat of floor wax on it, just like we do on our diagnostic models. The reason we want it nice and smooth is you don't want the putty to stick into it. You want the putty to come out. As you can see, there's the shape of the putty, and it's going to come right out pretty easily. And then the floor wax is going to keep stuff from sticking to it. Once you've got your floor wax on, then I would recommend you take a number 8 round burr. And as you might be able to see in this one, we've put a little 1 right here. There's one of them around here that's got a 3. There's one of them with different numbers. The other thing you can do is on the outside of the jig, you can take a burr and scribe in the numbers into the brass that's coated with a little bit of chrome. So, as always, I believe you can do this in your own office, very inexpensively, using materials you already have available to make your life a whole lot easier. Because our number one goal here at Cassidy Dental Associates is to make dentistry great again.